This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Will Friedle, the voice of the future Dark Knight, Batman Beyond.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 378 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend and brother, Liam. Liam, as we discussed last week, our stay here in the future of the DCAU includes two more Zeta Project reviews. And boy, do we have good news for you. After this, we only have two more full episodes, two more double features, and a single feature to wrap things up. So we're counting down, baby. The countdown has begun. We are down to the final, with this episode, 4 editions of Zeta Project Reviews, Liam, with our reviews of Eye of the Storm and Quality Time today.
That's right. And boy, not to jump the gun, but these might be the at least one of these episodes is maybe the episode I have the least to say about anything we've ever covered. So we're getting to the most mid episodes in the history of the DCAU, but we always find something fun comes to these Zeta double features. And I'm sure we'll find something today in our discussion.
That's right, Liam. And before we get into today's synopsis for this week's episode, starting with Eye of the Storm, we will mention that the IMDb synopsis for this week's episodes is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. The best way to support the podcast. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review if you want to become a one-time supporter of the podcast. You know, you want to send us a nice compliment. Hey, you know what? Keep on keeping on. Keep on getting through these Zeta Project reviews. That's a little bit of encouragement. You can send us a one-time support, or if you want to become a monthly supporter of the podcast, you get some perks for supporting the pod. 3 different tiers to support us at, including our top Super Friend tier, which gets you the ability to ask a question, as we have this week about the episode that we'll be reviewing. So we'll get that question of the week a little bit later here, but whichever way you choose to support the podcast, whether it's a one-time support or a monthly supporter, please head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So this is the synopsis for Eye of the Storm, written by Ralph Soule and Christopher Simmons, directed by Tim Maltby, with music by Christopher Carter and animation by DR Movie Co. or DR Digital Co., as I believe they were known at the time. And that synopsis reads as such. Zeta and Ro are in Kansas when they meet two brothers who have invented a device to disperse tornadoes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's
pretty much the long and short of the episode, too.
Yeah.
Want to get to our scores here? Or... Yeah, this is this episode. I mean, the only thing that I can say is, with the box office behemoth Wicked for Good about to debut here at the original time of recording here, I will just say that it is one of those happenstance things that you would think we planned, that there's an episode of Zeta that happens to have tornadoes in Kansas. But yeah, our episode kicks off with Zeta and Ro, who are seeking shelter from some storms in Kansas. They head into a very nice man who offers them the ability to stay in his shelter, despite the fact that it takes him apparently enough time for a bunch of telephone poles and part of his building to collapse to walk 5 feet and get into said shelter. They do in fact get into the shelter, where they observe from the inside the aforementioned two brothers. That's right. Two guys who decided that in order to defeat tornadoes, we have to blow up tornadoes. Of course.
Yeah, some real G.I. Joe Cobra Commander logic here. But yes, we do in fact have a guy in this wacky orb device, and yeah, we find out it's these two brothers.
And let's just say, at least initially here, observed by Zeta and Ro, they are not having much success. They talk about it as if they've had success, but then I'm confused because they both act very surprised later on in the episode when they have success. So I'm not quite sure if they did or did not have success with this machine beforehand, but they were having moderate success with this, but ultimately are not able to completely stop the tornado. After the tornado disperses on its own, Zeta and Ro escape the shelter and they begin having a conversation with said brothers. They bum a ride with him since their car was destroyed in the tornado. And wouldn't you know it, out on the road, uh, more tornadoes. This is just Tornado Alley, just tornado after tornado. Luck of the draw here, and we learn a little bit about our brothers here. We have Dex and Carl are the brothers. Carl is the nerdy computer guy who designed both the vehicles that they're using and the orb that they call the tornado zapper, cyclone zapper. What do they call it? They can't decide on what it is. They're arguing over what it's called. And Dax or Dex Finley is the handsome debonair brother who is the hotshot and not so smart guy, but is clearly much more confident and much more I don't know, suave, let's just say. So Carl confides in Zeta that he's a little less confident, a little more nerdy than his brother, and that he feels like he has to hide his nerdiness from people. So he and Zeta connect on that. Meanwhile, Dex does his best to try and flirt with Ro a little bit. They do escape the next tornado. They're able to escape it. But not for long, as another tornado shows up. They release the orb into it this time. Zeta and Ro jump in the driver's seat, and Zeta offers some helpful advice, which Liam just so happens to help the orb work, which then leads to Dex being able to successfully save a small town from the tornado. When he gets out, let's just say that he's a bit of a glory hog.
That's right. Denizens of this small town, who all apparently were in a diner at the time of this tornado happening, all 12 of them, are quite taken with Dex, especially as they see him get out of the aircraft, and they heap lots of praise on him, call him a hero. There's even a news reporter that wants to interview him, and Dex is all too happy to take all of the glory for himself, not even mentioning his little brother Carl, the brains behind the operation, which is quite frustrating for Carl himself, who is a little bit antisocial and a little bit angry that his brother isn't giving him the credit. And so as Z and Ro watch Dex get all of these accolades and hit on the local diner waitresses, we see that another tornado is apparently detected in the area, and so Carl decides he's going to go off and stop it himself. He gets into the vehicle and goes flying off to stop it on his own. He doesn't tell anyone where he's going. However, thankfully, there's a news report that comes on just that second that the diner waitress alerts them to that apparently they now know that there's another tornado on the horizons. So Zeta and Ro and Dex go speeding off, trying to catch up to Carl. As Dex points out, that Carl's never actually piloted the thing himself before and could be in danger. Carl, full of piss and vinegar and determined to stop it on his own, bites off a little bit more that he can chew. It's an F5 tornado. They make a point to say that several times, and he attacks it to the best of his ability, but he's overwhelmed and he's sucked up into the vortex, and things are looking a little dire as Dex is panicked, thinking that maybe he's about to see his brother expire. And here's where Zeta, having no other recourse, decides to reveal himself as a synthoid to Dex and tell him that he's going to try to use his abilities to get inside the heart of the storm, and maybe he can get up into the air and pilot the machine himself. Since Dex is well, they make a point of saying there is remote controls for this device, but that Carl had disabled them or locked them out. So the only way to save the day is for Zeta to jump up into this tornado, which he does. He lands on the device, and he is able to finally get inside once again, much to the shock of Carl now, who sees that he is in fact a synthoid, which also answers how Zeta was so smart and able to help Carl work on the device earlier. Thankfully, between Zeta and Carl, as well as Dex and Ro back on the ground, they're finally able to disable this big giant tornado, and all of the falling debris disappears. So that's good. I guess they vaporized the debris along with the air, but they're able to stop the tornado right as it was about to hit the town again. So all's well that ends well. The two brothers this time are very willing to share credit in front of the people of the town as they're arm in arm. They've learned their lesson that it takes two to make a thing go right. And they, as the reporter is sniffing around and wants to know who the third man was, or the other man piloting the device was, Ro points out that there's plenty story here, and that she doesn't really need to go sniffing around to find out the identity of that third pilot. And so, as the reporter goes off to interview the boys, Z and Ro take their leave, and they're on to the next town as they continue their hunt for Dr. Selig. And yeah, that's where we wrap up for this episode.
Boy, Liam, that was we might clock in at the fastest recap of an episode in history right there, and deservedly so, because this episode was so boring. Felt bad for our next episode because I felt like it bled over, because I watched these back to back. It bled over into that. That one had at least, we'll talk about in a second, was at least moderately more exciting, but this was so boring. And there's like, I kept waiting. I was like, "Oh, is the younger brother going to turn evil and, like, I don't know, throw his older brother into the tornado or something?" Like, no.
Right.
The whole crux of our plot here is jealous boy is jealous, and he wants to prove that he's a hero too, and brothers are going to fight, but you know what? At the end of the day, brothers are going to hug, and that's crime doesn't pay. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the moral of our story is here. Like, talk to each other, don't love each other, be nice to each other, be more aware of your other people that help you. Don't be a glory hog. I don't know. There are plenty of things in here that you can pick apart, like the fact that Zeta is a synthoid robot that can hack into the NSA database, but he can't hack this homemade controller to remote control operate the device. Okay, the fact that the tornado, for at least a significant period of the middle portion of this episode, follows the car down a winding road. That was another thing. It's just following along. It's not going straight. It's just following around down the curves and everything. But yeah, I did not like this episode in a very different way than a lot of the episodes I feel like in Zeta that we've hated or strongly disliked. This is suffers the crime of being boring and having no redeeming value, I don't think. And guess what? We have yet another filler episode that in no way advances our main story plot of finding Dr. Selig. So 0 out of 10 for my plot score.
Wow, I thought I was being harsh with my 2 out of 10, but yeah, it's hard for me to disagree. It's boring. My only notes that I really took for the episode for the story is, and I quote, "Is this whole episode just them running from a tornado?" And the answer is yes.
Multiple tornadoes, actually, but yes.
Right. Yeah,
it is just them versus tornadoes.
Yeah, and I know there's a quote from Bob Goodman, the showrunner for this show, who said something like, in the latter half of season 2, the only villains we could get approved were the weather, which I think was kind of a shot of just how the network viewed this show, and I guess what potential audience it would have. They weren't looking for many more super villains for Zeta to face down with, even though there were one or two. But so I'm sure there's sometimes you're at the mercy of the network. This might not be our writers, Mr. Saul, Mr. Simmons. I'm sure it's not their fault. But unfortunately, yeah, this is dreadfully. And well, I mean, usually I would wait till voice acting, but I think really the gag is just that the two people playing the brothers are real life brothers who appeared in like a show together. And I feel like that's not enough of a reason to do an episode either. So
Yeah.
regardless, we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, like it's just dreadfully boring. And yeah, we always talk about at least you want to see your characters in a different place than they were at the start of the episode, or but it's not really a story about Zeta or Ro, or even if it's like a character beat for, or like the other episodes we've talked about where they explore who Ro was before she met Zeta, or when we see the flashbacks to Zeta's first mission or whatever. Like those are building character, even if it's not advancing the present day plot. It's like this does nothing. Like Ro and Zeta are just kind of along for the ride as we watch these like the reverse weather wizard brothers. Instead of making a machine that creates tornado, they're making a machine that destroys them, and then they just kind of don't like each other, and that's the entire episode. So yeah, rough start.
I will say you did your very kindest to let our writers off of the hook for this, but I will say whoever that was responsible for two of the worst pieces of dialogue in DCAU history. It's official. I hate tornadoes. That's one line. The other one is you're a synthoid. I'll explain more later.
It's not great. Not
Not
great, Bob.
not great, Bob. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, which is animation and visuals for our first episode here. As you mentioned, DR Movie Co., as they are known now, responsible for the animation for this episode, which, by the way, aired on May the 18th, 2002. I've neglected to mention that, but yeah. Animation and visuals here. I will say there is a benefit to watching these episodes in that I think I mentioned it before. There is a Internet Archive upres version of these episodes that
Mm-hmm.
I tend to watch. If I had to watch this in low definition, I think I would have poo-pooed this score so bad. Uh, I'm just going to start by saying I gave animation and visuals a 5 out of 10, and the
Mm-hmm.
reason why is it looks fine. Everything looks fine. There's some interesting, I think the tornado sequences are, I guess, add to the visual excitement, if that's what you want to call it. Maybe just visual
Mm-hmm.
authenticity. I didn't doubt that they were fighting a animated tornado. uh, there were a couple of homages I felt. There's the spinning barn that kind of looks like the beginning of Wizard of Oz. So as we
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, you got to have some. If you're gonna do a Kansas tornado storyline here, you got to throw in some visuals there. I'm surprised they didn't have like a man in a tin costume also show up at some point. But no nods to Smallville or anything Superman related. That made me sad. I thought they would do at least some little, I don't know, some little homage to the Kents or Superman or something being in Kansas. But nope, right past there. The orb machine is kind of cool looking.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they visually, I don't know the science behind shooting electricity at a tornado and how that helps the wind to stop, but it looks kind of cool. And even with the CGI car and the CGI orb at times, it at least they have the overlay with it. It looks like normal cell animation on top of it. So yeah, I went with a 5 out of 10 for my animation and visuals. Not a ton of highlights, but no lowlights here that I've noted. What about you?
Yeah, I was impressed with how well the tornado itself was animated.
Mhm.
So I went with just a touch higher at 6 out of 10. I think it's they do a good job, solid job with that stuff. The destruction, maybe because they go out of their way to make it clear that there's no human beings in the town or whatever at the time the tornado hits. So you can ramp up the destruction a little bit. There's a couple of sort of top down views where we're following the car and then the tornado is off in the background that I think are pretty well done and move pretty fluidly. So yeah, probably the visuals are probably the highlight of this episode, which unfortunately is not saying a lot.
There we go. All right, let's move on to our next category, Liam. We are blowing right through this episode, pun intended, like a tornado. We have music by Christopher Carter for this week. Not a ton. I think we've discussed this before here. Not a ton to note. You kind of have some musical cues that kind of create emphasis around different lines and different minor actions that are happening on the screen, but it is more or less in line with what we hear typically for the episode. And I don't know. Maybe it's just this episode was grating on me a little bit, and it being boring. It could have stood to have some excitement from the music to help carry it. I'm not saying that the pieces that are there or that Mr. Carter did anything wrong with maybe what he was already instructed to do as far as the music is concerned. But yeah, I feel like the music being a focus or doing something could have picked this episode up a little bit. So my musical score was a 4 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I gave it the exact same score of a 5 out of 10. Unfortunately, yeah, nothing against the work of Mr. Carter, but yeah, nothing really standing out either. So yeah, it's an average day at the office.
All right, Liam, well, that will bring us to our final category of the day, which is going to be voice acting. And as you mentioned, we have our standard cast here with our Ro and Zeta, which we'll talk about again in our final episodes. Not a ton to talk about with them, but then as you mentioned, we've got some guest stars here with two real life brothers laying, filling in for our actual brothers here. And they're pretty familiar. At least one of them, you'll recognize one of their names, if not both of them.
Yeah, and he even gets his catchphrase in this we'll talk about. But yeah, we'll take out the ancillary performers here. We have Robert David Hall as Thad, who I think is one of the other guys at the storm shelter at the beginning. We do have the voice of the original Killer Croc in Batman the Animated Series, Aaron Kincaid. He's playing the dad of the family at the start of the episode. Nice to hear his voice. Apparently, his final acting role, as he retired soon after, and then before unfortunately passing away in 2011. But always good to get a DCAU alum in there. We also have Laurie O'Brien as Paula, the diner waitress, and then it's funny she's not credited, but she gets multiple scenes. Andrea Romano is our news reporter, I'm pretty sure. So pretty recognizable voice when you've watched as much behind the scenes DCAU stuff as we have. So fun that she's in there. But yeah, as you mentioned, we have Andrew Lawrence playing Carl and his real life brother, Joey Lawrence, or Joe Lawrence. I'm sure he doesn't go by Joey as an adult man. At least I hope not. As playing Dex. Yeah, so Joey Lawrence was on a very famous show for its era called Blossom. And then I believe they, along with their third brother, also starred on some kind of short-lived sitcom together in the 90s as well. And Andrew Lawrence, also the voice of TJ, that like the leader kid on Recess, as I saw when we were making our notes for this. So that's a delightful blast from the past if you remember Disney's Recess, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners do. But yeah, like it's fun that you have these two brothers together. I think they do an all right job with like the bickering back and forth and all of that. They're kind of let down, as we've said, by the source material just being a not very interesting episode. But yeah, I feel like the only thing here is that apparently, and I had to Google this, Joey Lawrence's catchphrase on the show Blossom was the word "whoa," and we do get him doing a big "whoa, whoa, whoa" during when he's caught up in the tornado at one point. So that's your little meta reference to the Lawrence brothers here. At least you got to throw that in at least.
There you go. Yeah. Honestly, not a lot of hate going their way. They do have some chemistry, which makes sense because they're real life brothers. So it does, and they're actors on top of it. So it does come across as pretty authentic. I think Joey's take as Dex does come across as kind of like the arrogant showboat guy. Carl may be a little less nerdy than I would expect a nerd voice to sound like, but hey, nerds come in all forms and fashions. So I guess, and he wasn't much. It wasn't that he was just a nerd. He was just a little bit less confident. So yeah, overall, I think Our performances, I settled at a 5 out of 10 by everybody. I don't think that there's too much here to write home about. But hey, you know what? It wasn't a negative having these two well-known actors playing brothers that just happen to be brothers.
Yeah, I went with the same exact score. I went 5 out of 10. Obviously, Deidre Bader and Julie Nathanson as Zeta and Ro. That being said, as we said, they don't really get anything to do this week. So like there's a little bit of drama at the end when Zeta's like, I gotta go out there, and Ro's like, but what if you what if you can't survive in a tornado? Well, it turns out he can, so that's fine. But yeah, otherwise it's not they're there for some quips and some puns and then to deliver your exposition. So yeah, overall 5 out of 10. Everybody's fine. Nobody does a bad job. It's just like I said, they didn't unfortunately have much to work with.
All right, well, totaling everything up here at the end, I end up with my 0 out of 10, starting out very slow here. We still ended up moderately higher than I expected. 14 out of 40, still not great though. Probably in the running for the lowest score of the year when we total up here in a couple weeks. But 14 out of 40. What about you?
Yeah, and I guess by virtue of me being a bit kinder in a couple of our categories, I settled on an 18 out of 40. So definitely not disagreement alarm worthy, but yeah, suffice to say, skip when we talk about rewatchability, even for the Zeta Project, which none of these episodes are rewatchable, as we're finding out,
Mhm.
but especially not this one.
Delete it from the memory banks. All right, Liam, let's move on to part two of our double feature here this week. And as we mentioned at the top, the next episode is titled Quality Time. And Quality Time, we will get our official IMDb synopsis for Quality Time, which happened to debut July the 13th. So we had a couple weeks here between, a couple months between new episodes from when the last one debuted. But Quality Time debuted July the 13th, 2002, written by Kevin Hops and Ralph Soil, teleplay by Robert Goodman, and directed by Tim Maltby, with DR Digital Co. all once again responsible for animation. Let's get that official IMDb synopsis.
This was airing at the same time as Justice League. That's insane. All right. Anyway, Bennett is forced into an alliance with Zeta when his son and Ro are trapped in a submarine under an unstable coral reef.
Yes, not again. I don't think that there's much to complain about that. I will say though, as an alternate IMDb synopsis, I would nominate potentially Agent Bennett nominates himself and solidifies his role in the worst DCAU dads.
Absolutely. And by the way, don't think we're joking. That will be a bonus episode someday.
Worst dads of the DCAU coming soon. If you've been a long time listener, you've heard us reference it many times. So don't be surprised the day that it finally drops. But that's right. Liam, Quality Time kicks off with Agent Bennett, who for some reason is watching a video of exposition talking all about Zeta and including a video of Zeta escaping, even though that's not how it happened, but okay. Zeta is escaping, and we're learning all about why Zeta is running away. He's doing research. He's doing research on restricted government level restricted information from his home computer. Makes perfect sense. I mean, politicians do it. Why can't agents of the NSA do it, you know? So Agent
Mhm.
Bennett is here doing his research in front of his family, by the way, who definitely don't have clearance for that. But his young son, James Jr., walks in and he just wants some attention from dad. Dad, being the worst dad or one of the worst dads in the DCAU, fulfills the prophecy and is not interested, despite the fact that he promised to hang out with his young son, James. He's too busy. He's got work. Go ask your mother. He even gets that line in, which I had to note there. They're just solidifying, going above and beyond that Agent Bennett is a bad dad. But
Mhm.
as Agent Bennett is waiting, asking the computer for information that he actually will be able to use, the AI is able to provide him with new information, including about Dr. Selig, who is apparently recently at this facility where he's written a new report and that report is potentially available for Agent Bennett to review. He realizes that it's taking place at the aforementioned reef, a little there's a whole science building there at the reef, and they're going to go there. And he realizes that this could be an opportunity to learn and potentially learn more about Zeta, what his motivations are. And guess what? He can also earn some brownie points by being a fake dad at the same time, bringing his son along. And James, though, smart kid, realizes when they get to the facility that that it was all a ruse, that it's all about actual work, and that Agent Bennett was only bringing him along for the optics, I guess, to make his mom think that he was actually hanging out with him. I don't know, but I love the lines. I love when James discovers that this is all not an actual quality time session between the two of them, but instead is so that Agent Bennett can do work. James calls him out on it, and Agent Bennett says, "Didn't you enjoy the car ride?"
That is a genuinely great line.
That was a good line. Just bad dad material here. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So, being the bad dad that he is, Agent Bennett sees that there is a young man who is standing off and has a submarine that he's preparing. By the way, previously in the scene before this young man, we learned that Z and Ro are talking with this young man at this facility. He apparently is responsible for one of the 2 subs that they have there. And Ro flirts her way into getting a private tour in the sub. Zeta is going to stay on base and do a little bit of his own, I guess, reconnaissance, something or other. So Ro's going to flirt and get into the sub with this guy and spend some one-on-one time on a date. But as Agent Bennett has arrived, he interrupts. Well, not quite interrupts. He runs into the pilot, this young man Brett, who's going to pilot the Torpedo 1, and forces him to take his son with him under threat, and after showing his NSA badge to him. So he dumps young James, onto Brett, this complete stranger that he's never met before, so that Agent Bennett can do reconnaissance around the area. So, unbeknownst to him, Ro, one of the fugitives, is also in the submarine with his son, and they don't get along. She doesn't get along with Agent Bennett's son. Agent Bennett has to do his own reconnaissance, and Zeta is just looking at dirt or something.
Yes, that's how we go. Yeah, we see Ro not having a good time. Her spontaneous date with Brett, the submarine pilot, has been hijacked by this kid. This kid is mad because he wanted to hang out with his dumb dad, and that's not working out for anyone. However, yes, we cut back. We see Bennett is talking to one of the doctors at the facility, asking questions about what exactly Dr. Selig was up to at this facility. The doctor says that she can't actually say. She just knows that she was asked to collect some information and then send it off to a more secure file for some sort of a secure email. She was told to send it to, I believe, and that was and that's all she knows. But she mentions, "Oh, wouldn't you know it? You're actually the second person to ask me about Dr. Selig today. The other guy who asked me is right over there." And she points to Zeta, who's just kind of standing there. Apparently not really thinking. I guess he didn't expect Agent Bennett to be there, so he didn't know he should blend in. So he's just waiting around for Ro to finish her submarine date. But yes, that sends Agent Bennett into action. He has like these Boba Fett wrist lasers that he puts on that are pretty neat, and he goes firing after Zeta. They sort of tussle on the docks. Zeta ties an anchor around Bennett's leg and then throws the anchor into the ocean. And for a second, I'm like, did Zeta just try to drown Bennett? Apparently not, but I don't know how that would have been avoided if the rope didn't catch the edge of the pier, I guess. But
I think the jury would find him guilty. Yeah, the jury would find him guilty of attempted murder.
Agreed. I was like, whoa, Zeta, you made a vow not to destroy anymore. What's going on here? I don't know. Maybe he was so precise that he knew the rope would catch on the side of the pier, but I don't know. Like you said, I'm not sure that hold up in court. But yes, Zeta gets lost inside the facility, and Bennett goes chasing after him. And as they're playing a little game of cat and mouse, we cut back to the sub where Roe and James Jr. are floating down as the coral reef that they're exploring begins to crumble and fall down towards them. Not only does it damage the sub they're in, but it also knocks out their pilot. And so Roe and James Jr. are in quite a bit of trouble. The sub's taking on water and it's damaged. Roe can kind of pilot the ship, but she can't keep it going as the propulsion system has been damaged. So they radio for help. Just as Bennett and Zeta, like we said, they're still running around the side of the facility. Bennett runs in after overhearing the call for help, realizing that it's his son who is in danger. At that point, Zeta reveals himself and says that they'll work together in order to save Roe and James Jr. and I guess the other guy too. Bennett agrees, but also places a pair of handcuffs on Zeta because, above all else, he's not letting Zeta escape today as they take a second sub down and they're going to go play rescue for Bennett's son and Roe.
That's right. And so Bennett and Zeta, their unlikely odd couple alliance continues as they get down there. And meanwhile, as they've bickered throughout, and actually Zeta breaks out of his handcuffs in the middle of the descent. They go back and forth, verbal barbs. He breaks out so that he can help Bennett steer the ship. Bennett still very much does not trust him, but they get down to the bottom where they learn at that point that the ship is taking on water. James Jr. has been using the manual pump to get some of the water out, but realizes that unfortunately that it's not going to work. They're going to continue to take on water, and it's not going to work forever. So Zeta and Agent Bennett decide that they are going to try and drive around and figure out what's going on. Once they reach the depths, they're successfully avoiding some of the collapsing reef that seems to be continually collapsing. They realize that the ship that Roe and James Jr. and the unconscious Brett are in has lost its rudder, so they're trying to figure out how in the world they're going to be able to get everybody up there. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention one offhand comment from Brett mentioned that there is a weight limit for these subs, so you can't fit all 5 people into one sub. So we got to evenly distribute this. We got to get use both subs to get everybody back up there, but the one sub without the rudder and that is taking on water is the issue. So after some bickering back and forth as to how they're going to get on, who's going to go where, Agent Bennett and his son decide they're going to go together after James Jr. insists that they ride together. He wants to spend some quality time with his dad. He doesn't want his dad to die alone. And Roe can pilot the working sub by herself. She jets off, and Zeta, who does not need air, is going to act as the rudder for the sunken submarine. They take off, and James Jr. is doing his best to keep the water out, but it is coming in pretty fast. Zeta gets knocked out by falling debris from the reef. The sub begins to sink again. We go to commercial break and a fade to black, but then Zeta's just okay and saves the day and hurls the submarine towards the surface, enough for it to finally breach, and all's well there at that point. So Zeta is just kind of floating there. Agent Bennett sees him, tells him not to think about leaving. The Coast Guard arrives. Agent Bennett jumps to the Coast Guard ship, leaving his poor son on the sinking submarine again. Whoops. Solidifying that role. Top 2 worst dads maybe of the DCAU here. Somehow he caught up with the guy from Static who's a racist. But yeah, we're moving. Racist dad had a 40-point lead and somehow blew it with Agent Bennett on his tails here. But Agent Bennett then quickly decides, grabs a rope, sees that his son is sinking, throws the rope, and that allows Zeta and Roe to escape. And James Jr. mentions that once they get back to shore, his dad can just go after Zeta then. But at this point, Agent Bennett has had enough, sees the value in things, and realizes he's going to spend some, get this, quality time with young James. And that's the end.
Hey, that's the name of the episode.
It is. That's the end of the episode here. So, as I mentioned, Lee, it was tough watching these two episodes back to back. This episode did drag a little bit, I would say, in the first 10 minutes or so. The last little bit kind of moves at a clip, which is nice. But uh, the good things sandwich compliment here. This moves the story along, like at a snail's pace from where we were. Like at least this is something to do with Dr. Selig and involves Agent Bennett
Hmm.
and Zeta interacting. There's this little bit where Agent Bennett tries to bribe Ro into turning on Zeta to help her find her family, and she
Hmm.
realizes that, or she makes a comment about Agent Bennett not understanding the value of family. So there's at least a little interaction there too. But overall, this is just kind of like a wild goose chase for the most part because our characters are on the run again, and we don't know what information they gleaned really from whatever Dr. Selig report was. So they're just on the run again. Agent Bennett learned the lesson of valuing actual family over work. But he hasn't really learned his lesson, despite seeing Zeta in action, being a good non-threatening synthoid. He still is making it his mission to hunt him down. So, plot 4 out of 10 for me. What about you?
Yeah, I went 5 out of 10. I think it's okay. I think the idea of Zeta and Bennett having to work together is fun. And I think it shows like just the goodness of Zeta and Ro to a lesser extent. Um, and it is interesting though because we don't really get the sense that Bennett's going to give up the chase. He gives it up for this time, but there's still that feeling of like next time. We've seen with like Agent Lee and some of the other characters on the show who have had these moments, and it kind of shakes their belief in what they're doing, which might be the most interesting thing anyone's gone through as far as character development on this show. So it would have been interesting to see maybe more doubt in Bennett's mind, or maybe just double down on him being the worst dad of all time, and he really does like leave his son unattended again to try to go after him, and you just really hit home that his obsession has kind of driven him crazy. So yeah, as it stands, it's an interesting concept for an episode. Again, you don't really have a central villain. The villain is the ocean. So it's there's not a great deal of conflict beyond can Zeta and Bennett get down to them before the ship floods, I guess. So it's yeah, it's all right. It's all right per Zeta Project standards at least. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for me.
There we go. Animation and visuals is our next category, Liam. DR Movie Co. once again responsible for animation. Any highlights that you wanna talk about?
I think some of the I like the design. We have like a lot of scenes of them going past the different sea creatures. I think that's well animated and fluid. A lot of them moving through the water is cool. I already mentioned I do like Agent Bennett's wrist gauntlets.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of a fun deal. And we got like alternate clothes for Ro, I think, in this episode. So
Mm-hmm.
some unique looks, and we even get like Bennett in like a polo and golf short instead of his FBI suit or whatever. So yeah, they we get some interesting visuals there. I think the bit at the end when the Bennetts are being sent up while Zeta's propelling behind them, I think that's fun with his feet being the propellers is kind of a cool visual as the cockpit continues to fill with water. They do well with what's given to them. Again, without anybody, without any punches or explosions, it's maybe hard to really generate action in a show like this. But they do a little bit. At least there's that fun little chase sequence with where Zeta tries to kill a guy.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to that. I went with a 5 out of 10 for my score. I think that there is certainly some stuff here that is interesting. There's nothing again that is looks bad or out of place, but without a lot of action here, it's just noticeable with this show, and it's unfortunate. And as we've said 1,000 times, it's not what the showrunners would have wanted, but it's just there's just such a lack of action that everything has to come from, oh no, are our characters going to get crushed by something?
Mm-hmm.
No, they're not. It's okay at the last second. And like I said, in this case, we go to a commercial break after Zeta's been hit by a falling piece of the crumbling reef, and then we cut back, and he's just okay. No explanation for what happened or how he got out of it or how he responded or what have you. He's just back. He's saving it. But I did think the foot propeller thing was interesting. I did think that there's some of the honestly some of the even though he's emotionless, some of the looks between him and Bennett in the scene where they're in the sub together, I think is pretty interesting. Like
Mm-hmm.
Bennett clearly animated in his expressions, looking back at this just emotionless robot that he's like has to trust. So I think there's a way to kind of empathize in a way with Agent Bennett. There's like, I don't know, would I trust a robot who doesn't emote? Like that is asking a lot. This hulking metal thing that could kill me in an instant that was designed to kill people. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for me. What about you?
Yep, same exact score here. 5 out of 10. A solid outing. Like I said, some of the ocean animation I thought was pretty impressive, but yeah, nothing really to write home about otherwise.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category of the day, which is music. And as Christopher Carter once again
Hmm.
responds for the music this week. So yeah, another another week, another stop me if you've heard this before, but the music blends in very well, which I think that's probably what was asked for this series. It doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of a variation here. I think some of the music that plays during the exploratory moments that we have Brett, the submarine guy, kind of showing around and trying to show off inside the reef is interesting. But and of course, once the tension gets turned up at the end with the crumbling of the reef and are they gonna get or is Agent Bennett and his son gonna drown in the submarine? Is Zeta gonna get crushed? All that tension that's built there is interesting. So some decent musical pieces there, but I don't think there was anything that was stood out to me as far as music was concerned. So I just gave it a middle of the road 5 out of 10. What about you?
Yep, same same exact score again. Yeah, it's a solid job. I like there's like a little like sea exploration music that comes in when they first drop into the water, but
Hmm.
yeah, other than that, nothing really spectacular. But yeah, good solid job trying to add tension to like we said, kind of a run of the mill script.
All right, Liam. Well, that will bring us to our final category of the day, which is going to be voice actors and actresses. Let's go ahead and talk about our small but mighty cast this week.
Yep, that's right. So yeah, we'll get through our cast here. We have Chris Demetral as Brett, the poor submarine pilot who everyone's really mean to. I mean, he got like I guess he kind of gets them stuck, but did he know that the coral reef was gonna blow up as soon as they got down there? I mean, there's a whole team of like scientists that
He
are on
said
base as
the only thing
well.
he said was, "We're not supposed to go in there." He didn't know that the sign that was covered up by
Okay,
seaweed that said dangerous falling thing, but he does have that throwaway line where he's like, "We're not supposed to go inside the reef anymore.
that's true.
But I'm gonna show
That's true.
you."
So I guess he does deserve it. But yeah, that's he does deserve the head trauma that he gets. But yeah, elsewhere we have speaking of BTAS alum, we have Marie Devon playing the computer, of course, the voice of Summer Gleason, the exposition computer recapping incorrectly how Zeta escaped the government for the first time. With complete with fake video. They deep faked video of him in his Zeta disguise, even though that he was fighting Batman at the end of that episode, or he was with Batman at the end of that episode. But
Right.
I guess we didn't want to just use footage from that episode. So anyway, we have her briefly back. Nice to hear her. We have Lorraine Newman as Dr. O'Keefe, who's one of the central scientists working at the facility. SNL Coneheads fame,
Hmm.
and several other and a lot of voice acting credits to her name as well. But it's interesting that she shows up here. And then, yeah, other than our main players, which we'll get to, we do have Michael Galasso as James Bennett Jr. Child actor. It's like, yeah, he's got a terrible dad. he's kind of whiny, but he's whiny for a good reason because his
Hmm.
dad's making him get on a submarine with strangers.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
think he
yeah,
does yeah, he does a fine job. I thought he has a little bit of interaction to do with Ro. Like as far as kid actors go, like yeah, solid, really, borderline like good. I felt like because they do ask a lot of him. He's got to interact with his dad, that is being a deadbeat dad. He's got to interact with Ro, who they have this like brother sister rivalry thing at the beginning, and then he does ultimately kind of get part of the hero's journey here of like being the reason why they get saved. So yeah, I enjoy it. A good performance.
yeah, I think he does a good solid job. And then yeah, we have our three main players. We have Julie Nathanson as Ro once again, Diedrich Bader as Zeta, and Diedrich playing off of Kurtwood Smith returning as Agent Bennett. That's really, I think, that's the best stuff in the episode. As we said, is kind of you already kind of mentioned it in visuals, but Bennett being so sort of single-minded and angry and sort of giving his like manifesto about the dangers and how I ignore my son so that I can stop dangers like you and make a better world and all of this. And Zeta being like, I'm just a little guy. I'm just a cool little guy. Cool little robot guy. So like they're back. The sort of the docile nature of Mr. Bader's performance as Zeta bouncing off of Mr. Smith's Agent Bennett. I think that's probably the best stuff we get in the episode.
Agreed. Yeah, it's nice to hear them kind of instead of I feel like they always yell at each other from like 50 feet away or don't interact at all. So for them to be like in each other's presence and have the ability to interact with each other, obviously two just obviously really talented voice actors in their own right. So yeah, having them in the same scenes, being able to interact back and forth with each other, I thought was really really good.
Agreed. Yeah, so for all those reasons, I gave voice acting a slightly stronger 6 out of 10 as my final score here.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we're going to end up just a point off in our overall scores here because I also settled with a 6 out of 10, which, Liam, that will bring us to our final scores for this week's episode. And totaling everything up, I end up with a 20 out of 40. Not a passing grade, but much better than my last score. What about you?
Yeah, and just 1 point higher at 21 out of 40. Yeah, as far as again, rewatchability, as much as any of the Zeta Project is rewatchable, this is an important episode as far as, the hero and the villain or the antagonist and the protagonist having to team up to set their differences aside. That's a seminal episode, I guess.
Yeah, I guess you could. I guess you could make an excuse to say that that's important. It does, like I said, ever so slowly here. It's amazing. We have 5 episodes left, and spoiler alert, it ends on a cliffhanger. But 5 episodes are left, and our plot has moved forward like a quarter of an inch over the last 4 or 5 episodes. I feel like so. Yeah, you could make the argument here, I guess, but none of these episodes are really worth watching. So take that as you will. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in for this week's double feature. That will begin to wrap us up for this week's episode. Before we let you go for the week, we'll go ahead and remind you please support the podcast. There's a couple of different ways to do that as we talk about each and every week. The easiest way to do so is to follow us on social media at DCAU Review. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter X, and we're, of course, on some of those ancillary social media platforms as well. We don't use those as often, Liam, but if you send us a message, we will eventually get back to you. But Twitter, X, and Instagram are the main ways to contact us. You can also leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify. Leave a comment there on the podcast. We will read those and we'll interact with you there if you leave a comment on Spotify. While you're on Spotify, if you're a Spotify listener, give us a 5-star review. You can do that. Just scroll down in your Spotify app all the way to the bottom, hit the 5 stars. That helps us a lot because that gets us into the algorithm more. Algorithms rule our lives these days. So please help us get up in that algorithm there. If you're on Apple Podcasts listening to us, same thing. Leave us a 5-star review. And remember, if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and we read it here on the air and you're here in the United States, we will send you a little thank you gift just for doing so. Check out our link in our profile on Instagram, the link in our profile on Twitter X. If you want to support the podcast, you will find the link right there to our buyusacoffee.com. So buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. You can head over there and become the one-time supporter or monthly supporter of the podcast. Liam, we'll continue next week. We did this a little over a year ago when we wrapped up Batman the Animated Series, and those episodes, we did a look back and kind of an anthology looking back at the top episodes and bottom episodes of the entire run. So we have fewer episodes to go through here with Batman Beyond, but looking back here, we want to look back and see where did we rank, what episodes, what are the top 5, what are the bottom 5. Do we agree with the actual scores at this point, being definitive list, or do we have something to say to ourselves here? We will find out next week as we take a look back at Batman Beyond, the best 5 episodes according to our rankings, according to our podcast rankings and our scorecards, the 5 best episodes of Batman Beyond coming next week. But until then, I'm Cal.
I'm Liam.
We will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Adios.